Hey everyone, welcome back.
It's great to be here.
So today we are diving right into something I think we can all relate to.
Yeah,
Stress.
absolutely.
That feeling of being, a little bit overwhelmed or under pressure. I mean, everyone experiences it at some point.
Right, and it has such a huge impact on,
Yeah.
how we feel and what we can actually achieve.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you look at it kind of on a grand scale,
Right.
the numbers are pretty crazy.
Yeah, Forbes reported that the U.S. spends almost $190 billion every year on healthcare costs related to stress.
Wow.
And, perhaps even more telling, 55% of Americans say that they feel stressed every single day.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, the global average is about 35%.
Yeah, so this is not just some, like minor annoyance. This is something that's really widespread.
Right, and has serious consequences for individuals,
Sure.
but also, the economy as a whole.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a big problem. Yeah, it is a big problem, and that's why in this deep dive, we're going beyond just acknowledging it exists.
Yeah.
We want to unpack some really practical, evidence-based techniques that you, our listener, who probably has a very busy life,
Right.
can use to manage it.
Absolutely.
And we've pulled from all kinds of different sources.
Yeah.
We've got insightful podcasts with doctors and well-being experts.
Yep.
We've got in-depth articles on productivity and stress management itself.
Yeah.
And we really want to make sure we're giving you guys those aha moments that connect the dots between what you can do and why it works.
Absolutely. So as we go through this deep dive, you're going to get a lot more information than just those like kind of surface level, tips.
Yeah.
We really want to give you the deep understanding that can make a difference
Exactly.
in your daily life.
Okay, so let's unpack this right from the start.
Yeah.
What exactly is stress?
Yeah.
We all kind of know the feeling, but I think it's really helpful to get a definition.
Absolutely.
So we're all on the same page.
Right.
So Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, who's from the ZOE podcast, offers, I think, a really useful way to think about it.
Yeah, he defines stress as our body's response to feeling under attack or in danger. And it's a deeply ingrained protective mechanism that's evolved over millennia.
Right, that fight or flight response that we always hear about.
Exactly. So if you think back to our ancestors, facing a real threat, like a predator, their bodies would instantly trigger a cascade of changes.
Yeah.
Their blood pressure and blood sugar would spike to fuel the brain and muscles.
Right.
Their blood would actually become more prone to clotting in case of injury.
Wow.
And their amygdala, the brain's fear center, that would become hyper alert.
Right.
All of this was designed for immediate survival.
Okay, so that makes perfect sense when you're like running away from a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
But the problem, as Dr. Chatterjee points out, is that our body reacts in much the same way to the stressors that we face today.
Yeah.
Things like, an overflowing email inbox, that never-ending to-do list.
Absolutely.
Right? It doesn't necessarily differentiate between a physical threat.
Yeah, so, our body doesn't always differentiate between like a life or death situation, like you're running away from a tiger, and, a perceived threat in the modern world.
Right.
That might not actually be life or death, but our body still reacts that way.
Yeah, and that's where the long-term damage starts to come in, right?
Exactly.
So this chronic, ongoing, activation of the stress response can lead to some really detrimental effects on our physical health.
Yeah.
Things like, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease.
Exactly.
And Dr. Chatterjee had a really interesting example of a patient he had who developed prediabetes, primarily.
As a result of these sustained high stress levels.
That's right. And it's kind of startling to hear about that,
Yeah.
That stress can actually manifest physically to that degree, like pre-diabetes. It makes you wonder about all the other ways that it's affecting us.
Yeah, and all the subtle ways that we don't even realize.
Absolutely.
Wow, that really brings home the impact.
Right.
The physical impact that this can have.
It does.
And it's not just, those big illnesses.
Yeah.
It can affect basically every system in the body.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So we're talking gut problems.
Right.
Digestive issues.
Yeah.
Those are often intensified by stress.
Yeah.
Because the body prioritizes immediate survival functions.
Yeah.
Right, over digestion.
Right, exactly.
And even things like libido can be affected.
Right.
Because procreation becomes less of a priority.
Absolutely.
When the body thinks it's under threat.
Now, I thought Dr. Chatterjee's concept of the micro-stress doses was a really interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, I like that as well.
So you want to break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah, so it's these small, seemingly manageable stresses
Right?
that we
Yeah.
kind of encounter throughout the day.
Yeah.
Individually, they might not feel like a huge burden,
Right.
but they accumulate over time.
Right.
And they can eventually push us beyond our individual stress threshold.
Yeah.
And then we get those negative physical and emotional consequences that we've been talking about.
Yeah. It's like that, that slow drip, drip, drip.
Yeah.
And eventually the bucket overflows.
Exactly.
And then Neil Shaw from the Wellbeing Plus podcast added another interesting layer to this.
Yeah.
He pointed out that the definition of stress isn't one size fits all.
That's right.
So you've got medical professionals, psychologists, health and safety folks.
Right.
They all kind of approach it from slightly different perspectives.
Yeah, they do.
And he was also brave enough to share his own personal experience with stress leading to a breakdown, which really, I think, underscores how serious this can be.
Absolutely. It can be very severe.
Yeah. So knowing that stress is this kind of multifaceted response with, potentially some serious health implications.
Absolutely.
Where do we even begin to get a handle on this?
What Mario Peshev, in his 32 Techniques guide, he makes it clear that the very first step is identifying what your individual stress triggers are.
Right.
You can't effectively address what you're not even aware of.
So true. It's like trying to fix a leaky pipe.
Exactly.
Without knowing where the leak's coming from.
Yeah.
So once you start to cultivate that awareness of what's setting off your stress response, then you can start to really explore different management techniques.
Yeah.
Now, one that I found really fascinating that Peshev talks about is the idea of actually shifting your mindset towards stress. So embracing stress.
That sounds a bit counterintuitive at first.
Yeah, it does a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But Peshev actually talks about a Stanford study.
Okay.
And it suggests that if you have a negative view of stress, it can actually lead to worse outcomes. And he talks about adopting an enhancing perspective. And that means viewing stress as a challenge that you can rise to rather than a purely negative force.
Right.
And that can actually trigger the release of hormones that boost memory and enhance performance. So it's kind of like a positive stress response.
So it's not about denying that it's difficult.
Yeah.
But it's about reframing how we think about it.
Exactly. It's recognizing that your body's stress response is trying to equip you to deal with a challenge.
Okay.
And it's about how can we channel that energy in a productive way.
Okay.
As opposed to letting it overwhelm us in a negative way.
Okay, so what are some of the practical things we can do?
Yeah.
He talks about the 4 A's. Yeah, so the 4 A's are avoid, alter, adapt, and accept.
Okay.
So think of avoid as your first line of defense.
Okay.
Best used for predictable stressors.
Okay.
So this is where you recognize those triggers that we talked about.
Right.
And wherever possible, you actively avoid them.
Right.
So for example, in your work life, if you're someone with a very busy schedule, it might mean proactively prioritizing tasks to avoid those last-minute rushes.
Right.
And the stress that comes with those.
So it's about being proactive.
Yeah, exactly.
And managing our environment.
Exactly.
And our workload as much as we can.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what about alter?
So alter comes into play when you have some degree of influence over the situation.
Okay.
So, can you strategically handle complications? For example, are there tasks that you can delegate to others instead of trying to shoulder everything yourself?
Yeah.
Are there decisions that someone else can make to free up some of your mental energy?
Right.
It's about, taking control where you have the ability to.
Yeah.
So that you can, reduce some of that stress.
Okay, and what about adapt?
So adapt is about cultivating resilience.
Okay.
And being ready to adjust to unexpected changes. Life rarely unfolds exactly as we plan.
Right.
So learning to roll with the punches rather than getting bogged down in what we could have done differently is crucial for effectively managing stress.
Right.
It's not always about what we could have avoided or altered.
Right.
It's about how can we adapt to the situation and move forward.
And then the last A, accept.
Accept.
That one feels like it could be the most challenging.
It often is, yeah. And accept is about acknowledging and coming to terms with those things that are genuinely beyond your control. We often experience a lot of stress about events or situations that we have no real influence over.
Right.
So the sooner you can accept those realities, the sooner you can stop expending energy fighting them.
Right.
Start managing your stress more effectively.
Right. It's about letting go of that stuff that's outside of our control.
Exactly.
Okay, so those 4 A's are a really great way to think about stressful situations.
Yeah, it's a nice framework to work within.
Now, Peshashev also emphasizes
Yeah.
the importance of getting out of your head.
Oh, absolutely.
I think we all struggle with that one a little
Yeah,
bit.
we do.
Yeah, what does he mean by that?
Well, overthinking and rumination,
Yeah,
those things just amplify feelings of stress.
yeah.
And he suggests actively practicing mindfulness techniques
Okay,
and engaging in healthy distractions.
okay.
Things like taking a walk in nature,
Yeah.
participating in sports.
Right.
These things can help shift your focus and quiet that internal mental chatter.
Yeah,
Sometimes a change of scenery can really help to recalibrate your thoughts.
yeah. I think that's so important. And then something that I think everyone loves, vacations.
Yeah.
Kashif is a really strong advocate
He-
for prioritizing time off, even for people in, very demanding executive role.
Yeah. He stresses that taking a vacation is absolutely essential
Okay.
for resting and rejuvenating yourself, engaging in physical activity, having fun, and just recharging your batteries.
Right.
These are all things that boost our dopamine levels, which has a really positive impact on our brain function and our well-being.
Yeah.
And he even shares this clever strategy for executives to plan successful vacations.
What's that?
He says, set aside a budget to deal with any work-related issues that might arise while you're away. And this can help to alleviate that anxiety about things falling apart while you're gone, making it easier for you to truly disconnect.
Yeah, because I think that's the big thing is people don't truly disconnect.
Yeah, they're always checking their phones and their emails.
Right. They're worried about, what's going to be waiting for them when they get back.
Exactly. So this can help alleviate that.
Right. It can help you truly relax, knowing that you've got something set aside to deal with things.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a really smart strategy. Now, he also talks about optimizing your daily life.
Yes.
Everything from, reorganizing your physical space
Right.
to, tweaking your schedule a little bit.
Absolutely.
What are some of his thoughts there?
Well, a lot of the time, these small intentional changes can lead to really big reductions in your daily stress.
Okay.
So reorganizing your home and workspace can create a more tranquil and organized environment.
Right.
Carefully considering your schedule,
Yeah.
factoring in your commute time,
Yeah.
identifying your most productive hours,
Yeah.
and making adjustments based on those things.
Right.
That can really help to minimize that daily friction.
Yeah. And he also talks about, temporarily letting go
Yeah.
of the pursuit of perfection,
That's right.
right? Using that
Yeah,
Pareto principle,
absolutely.
that 80-20 rule.
Yeah, that's a great way to break through backlogs and alleviate immediate pressure.
Yeah. And I think that really speaks to the idea that good enough is sometimes truly good enough.
Yeah, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't need to be perfect at everything all the time.
Absolutely.
And he also mentions implementing productivity techniques.
Yes.
Like the Pomodoro technique and getting things done.
Yes. So incorporating these methodologies can really improve your efficiency and give you a greater sense of control over your workload,
Okay.
which in turn reduces those feelings of stress and being overwhelmed.
Yeah, and keeping those long-term goals in sight can also be really helpful
Oh,
when
absolutely.
you're going through those short-term stressors.
Yeah,
It's about remembering why you're doing it.
exactly.
What's that big picture?
Yeah, that helps you to stay motivated
Right.
when things are tough.
Okay, and then there's this ABC technique.
Yes.
It sounds like a really practical way to analyze our reactions to stressful events.
Right. So it stands for adversity, beliefs, and consequences.
Okay.
And the idea is to reflect on a stressful event that happened in the past.
Okay.
What was the specific adversity that you faced?
Okay.
What were your underlying beliefs?
Right.
And immediate responses to that adversity?
Right.
And what were the consequences of those responses? And by going through this process, you can gain valuable insight
Yeah.
into how to develop more constructive
Okay.
and adaptive outlooks for future stressful situations.
Right. So you're learning from
Right.
our past responses
Exactly.
to do better.
In the future.
Absolutely.
Okay, now something that I think both Peshev and Dr. Chatterjee
Yeah.
really emphasize
Mm.
is the power of our breath.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
And it seems like such a fundamental thing.
Yeah.
But we often overlook it,
They do. Yeah.
when we're thinking about stress management.
Yeah. It's so simple.
Yeah, so why is that so important? Well, Chatterjee actually cited research showing that even something as simple as checking emails
Okay.
can shift our breathing patterns to be faster and shallower,
Okay.
which actually sends a signal of stress to the body.
Wow. I would never have thought of that.
No, you wouldn't think it would be that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got to be mindful of that.
We do.
Yeah.
And the great thing is you can use that to your advantage because, when you engage in intentional, slow, deep breathing,
Right.
that sends calming signals to the brain.
Okay.
You're basically reversing the process.
Right.
So Chatterjee highlights a particular breathing exercise, the 3-4-5 breath.
Yeah.
So you inhale deeply for a count of 3, you hold for 4, and then you exhale slowly for a count of 5.
Mm.
And he notes that even doing that for just 1 minute
Okay.
can lower your stress levels. He also mentioned what's called the physiological sigh, which is 2 quick successive inhales followed by 1 long, slow exhale.
And that's an incredibly effective way to rapidly calm the nervous system in moments of acute stress.
Wow.
Yeah, so those are 2 great exercises you can use.
Yeah.
Peshev also emphasizes deep breathing and exercises that focus on your breath as stress management tools.
Right.
So you can see how much emphasis is placed on this.
Yeah.
And then the 8 effector technique source, they kind of remind us of that reverse mind-body connection.
Okay.
So if you're stressed, you might start breathing faster.
Right.
But conversely, if we consciously regulate and slow down our breathing,
Okay.
we can signal a state of calm to our brain.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's really amazing that something so simple
Right.
can have such a big impact.
It can.
Now, Dr. Chatterjee also emphasizes the importance of movement,
He does.
perhaps even more so than structured exercise
Yeah.
when it comes to stress.
Yeah, he talks about how, historically when we faced danger, our bodies were primed for physical action,
Okay.
to run or fight. But with many of the stressors that we face today,
Yeah.
we're often remaining physically still,
Right.
but our body is in that heightened state of alert.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, incorporating movement into your day,
Okay.
even if it's just short bursts of activity,
Okay.
like, doing a few jumping jacks,
Okay.
can help to kind of work through that pent-up stress response.
Right.
And over time, it can increase your overall resilience to stress.
Okay, so even those little bursts can
Yeah.
really make a difference.
Yeah, and something as simple as walking,
Yeah.
going for a regular walk
Yeah.
can be incredibly beneficial for reducing stress.
Yeah. And the Ovyard's effective technique source.
Yes.
Advocates for supporting regular physical activity
Yes, they do.
in the workplace.
Yeah.
So it's not about, hitting the gym for an hour. It's
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
just getting that movement throughout the day.
It's about incorporating those little bits of activity. Take the stairs, go for a brisk walk, even just stretching at your desk can help.
Right. And another really interesting point that Dr. Chatterjee brought up was the role of human touch.
Oh, yeah, I love this one.
Yeah.
And this is based on the work of Professor Francis McGlone.
Okay.
And he studies these specialized nerve fibers called CT afferent nerve fibers.
Oh.
And they're uniquely stimulated by slow, gentle stroking of the skin
Mm.
at a specific speed of around 5 centimeters per second.
Wow.
And this stimulation actually sends signals to the brain that lower our cortisol levels.
Wow.
Cortisol is our main stress hormone.
Right. So it's that feeling of,
Right.
being comforted.
Exactly. It's that intuitive feeling
Yeah.
of, soothing touch, like when a mother is comforting a child.
Right.
It's that kind of feeling.
So there's actually a physical, biological effect happening when we experience that touch.
Yeah. And research has shown that it lowers cortisol, reduces heart rate and blood pressure, and even boosts the activity of natural killer cells,
Wow.
which are a vital part of our immune system.
Mm.
And Chatterjee even suggested that if human contact isn't readily available, self-massage using creams or oils can stimulate those same nerve fibers and provide some degree of stress relief.
Okay, so if you can't get a hug,
Yeah,
give yourself one.
exactly. And Mario Peshev also mentions seeking physical contact as a way to manage stress.
Right.
And he highlights the release of oxytocin, which is often called the love hormone.
Right.
It promotes feelings of bonding and well-being.
Yeah. And even in the ZOE podcast,
Yeah.
during the quickfire round,
Yep.
they confirmed,
Yeah.
the scientific evidence for this.
Yes, absolutely.
Really highlighting,
Yeah.
that need for
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah, that need for physical contact
Okay.
and interaction.
And of course, we can't forget about mindfulness and meditation.
Yes, those are important too.
These kind of well-established practices.
Yeah.
Peshev, talks about those quite a bit as well.
Yes. He emphasizes that they can provide not just immediate relief, but also lasting benefits for stress reduction.
Okay.
And he lists advantages like, gaining a broader perspective on your stressors,
Okay.
improving your ability to manage stress,
Yeah.
increasing your self-awareness, cultivating a greater focus on the present moment,
Right.
lessening the impact of negative emotions,
Yeah.
fostering creativity, enhancing your patience.
It's really developing that strength.
Exactly. It's about building that inner strength and resilience.
And what about self-massaging?
So self-massaging is a great way to release tension.
Okay.
And, research has actually shown that nurses experience significant stress reduction
Wow.
through massage.
Okay.
So if you think about it, it's a direct way to reduce muscle tension,
Right.
which often accompanies stress. And by reducing that, you reduce the overall stress level.
And the beauty of that is you can do that, even at work.
You can, absolutely,
Just in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Now, Peshev mentioned something called autogenic training.
Yes.
I wasn't familiar with that one.
So that's a self-hypnosis technique that was developed by Dr. H.H. Schultz.
Okay.
And it's about focusing on eliciting sensations of warmth and heaviness in the body.
Okay.
To induce a deep state of relaxation. And there are 6 specific formulas or exercises that are involved in the training.
Okay, so it's like a very focused...
Yeah, you could say that. It's like a guided relaxation.
Okay.
Where you're focusing on specific bodily sensations to induce a state of calm.
And, of course, we can't forget about self-motivation.
Right.
Because all this stuff is great.
Yeah.
But if we don't have the motivation to do it...
Yeah, if you don't implement it...
it's not going to help.
It's not going to make any difference.
So what are some tips for that?
Well, minimizing distractions in your environment.
Okay.
Starting your day with motivational content.
Yeah.
Maybe reading something inspiring or listening to something uplifting.
Right.
Utilizing positive self-talk and reinforcement.
Yeah.
And you can even consider professional training, life coaching, or joining support groups.
Right.
To really bolster that self-motivation.
And then there's those creative outlets.
Yes.
Exploring our creativity.
Yeah.
Engaging in hobbies.
Absolutely.
It's so important to remember to make time for those things.
Yes, it gives you an outlet.
Yeah.
And it helps you to feel more fulfilled.
Right.
And then even stress relief games can be helpful.
Okay.
But Parashov does caution against addiction.
Right.
And suggests choosing cooperative games and being mindful of your mental state after playing.
Right, because sometimes those games can get you...
They can.
Yeah, more riled up.
Exactly.
Than relaxed.
Yeah.
And then he talks about some really practical things. Yeah. Light dropping or postponing overwhelming duties.
That's right.
Learning to say no.
Yes.
And he also talks about creating a safe space.
Absolutely.
Can you elaborate on those a little bit?
Yeah. So learning to say no, that can be tough. You know? But, avoiding overcommitting yourself and effectively prioritizing your tasks.
Right.
Maybe using a tool like the Eisenhower matrix.
Okay.
That can really help you
to
kind of prioritize things based on their urgency and importance.
Right.
And then having a safe space.
Yeah.
A comfortable, calming environment where you can go and retreat and feel secure.
Right.
That can be really beneficial as well.
Yeah, it's like your little sanctuary.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And asking for feedback.
Yes.
Asking for support.
That's important.
I think that's really important.
It is.
Because sometimes we can feel very alone in our stress.
We can.
And so reaching out to other people